One. Hey everybody, Dave Hodges here. I'm the host of the Common Sense Show, and we are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. And we're decidedly Christian, so some people don't like it, but we appreciate you coming here because we hope that all of you will eventually get it. Anyway, we have a great guest today, Katherine Albrecht. And before we start, I need to let you know we're coming to you live from the Noble Gold Studios. And don't let the bank steal your money under Dodd-Frank and UCC Section 8. They could take your retirement too if they so desire. Don't let them do that. Noble Gold can help you. I have been a personal customer for almost 8 years, and they're the best people to work with. 877-646-5347, 877-646-5347, and they are the one sponsor for this show. Really glad to have them on board, and we're really glad to have Katherine Albrecht on board. Normally, I don't read lengthy intros, but it's so germane to our topic today, which is about the total loss of privacy. And also, we're looking at a situation now. It's just like your data case with Facebook. Remember years ago, your data is not yours. It belongs to the monoliths in social media. Well, now the antitrust laws are going away, and Catherine's going to instruct us on what is really going on and what's the threat. And there is a threat. Katherine is an internationally known privacy researcher, consumer advocate, best-selling author, nationally syndicated host. And that's just the beginning. She's the co-founder of the private email company StartMail that makes powerful encryption tools available. She holds a doctorate in human development and psychology, consumer education degree from Harvard University, has studied at the MIT Media Lab, and has received a master's from Harvard in technology, innovation, and education. Okay, that's just the education background. Listen to a few of the things that she has done. She's authored pro-consumer legislation, testified before the FTC, has provided expert testimony to numerous state legislators, was appointed a technology expert by New Hampshire Governor John Lynch. She's advised the European Commission, been invited to speak before advocacy groups, bar associations, government assemblies around the world. She's co-authored the best-selling book, Spy Chips, which we talked about in the past when she was a previous guest. And she exposed corporate plans to misuse RFID technology. And boy, did that ever come to the forefront. And she brought about much needed consumer privacy reform in the retail industry. I could go on and on and on. She's done over 2,000 interviews. She's on every major media outlet, and she's spending time here with us on the Common Sense Show. Katherine, it's great to have you on. And I love the title of that was sent to me about what you're talking about, chromopoly. I don't think that could be any more of a valid descriptor in one word in what we're dealing with. So, in this vast array of violations of privacy, and I know the Supreme Court decision did not favor the people, where would you like to start in all this?
Well, first of all, I want to say hello, Dave, and it's so great to see you again. We've been doing this for a long time, and things have really just continued to snowball when it comes to Google. I have been looking at Google for 15, 20 years now, watching their monopoly just expand and expand. And I was part of a group, a national coalition of privacy organizations that spoke out against Google, what we called the Google, I guess they called it the Google oneness policy that we now take for granted. But there was a time when Gmail and your searches through the Google search engine and the places you went on your map and the documents in your Google Drive, all of those different pieces of the Google sort of ecosphere were separate. And they made an announcement that they were going to combine them. And we privacy advocates were horrified because if you can know not only everything in a person's email, everywhere they go, you have access to all of their documents in the drive. It was an inconceivable power grab when it comes to information about people. And yet even though we objected, we did a position paper objecting to it, it just cruised right on under the radar from most people. And most people are using Google services all day long. This particular case was an attempt on the part of the federal government to break up the Google monopoly. So when you have a company who controls all of a particular sector, In this case, the browser industry, or the browser, basically which browsers are being put onto devices when they're sold, then that actually creates the potential for antitrust actions to come in and break it up. So in Google's case, Google has over the years, establish very lucrative relationships with the companies that manufacture our devices. So, Apple, for example, the iPhones and the computers and the laptops, and Samsung and Android, and you can go on and on. Of course, Google is Android, but you can go on and on with a lot of these manufacturers. And Apple, in particular, came up in this lawsuit. Google controls the Google search engine through the Chrome browser and other browsers, doesn't matter which browser you have, pretty much they all come installed with Google. That is because they have a very lucrative deal with Apple, that they pay Apple an enormous amount of money to put those as the default tools to use on all of their devices. And as a result, 96% of Americans use the Google search engine, and that is what was at stake here. So the in Europe there have been huge antitrust violations, fines against Google. In fact, they just got a fine of over $3.5 billion out of Europe, and for them that's nothing. That's the cost of doing business. That's how
Hmm.
huge this company has become. Here in the U.S., they were hoping that they would be able to split up the Google monopoly and force them to sell off the Chrome browser, which would then open up the potential for other search engines to come in and other browsers to come in. And that decision was, the judge decided not to do that. Google made the argument that that would be terrible, and it would take away people's favorite search engine and their favorite products. The reality is that I don't know that any of us would say that's our favorite unless it had been given to us for years. So, in any event, this was yet another, I think, nail in the coffin for privacy. Yet another action on the part of the federal government to, you know, I think there are forces there that would like to see it broken down. I think there's others who say it's actually pretty helpful to have all this stuff in one place. If you are looking to get information about people, where do you go? You go to Google, you go to Facebook, you go to, the people who have these repositories of information, and the federal government does that all the time.
But Google has become a verb, so I think that speaks for
Yeah,
itself.
it has been for a long time.
I know, and just go Google it. And the thing
Yeah.
that bothers me is, uh, well, first of all, I think this should be appealed because I think we're dealing with a single judge. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and it depends on what district court it's going to go to. How far up the trail judicially has this case gone?
Uh, I am not a legal expert. So I'm not a legal expert. I don't have that specific.
No, has it
Yeah,
reached
if
the
you,
Supreme Court? Do you know?
no, no, it has not
I
yet.
didn't think
Absolutely
so.
not. Yeah.
And I have to tell you, the Trump administration can't be a fan of Google, so you think he would instruct the DOJ to really pursue this?
It's interesting because Mark Zuckerberg recently was caught in a hot mic. I don't know if you heard that story, but just a couple days ago, talking about how much money they're going to put into the U.S. And on the hot mic, he turned and said, "I hope that was okay," to President Trump. I hope that was a number you're okay with. Making it pretty clear that these tech bros, these big tech companies, are falling over themselves to get the favor of the Trump administration. We know that what we all saw the pictures of Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and at the wedding and or at the inauguration, and we know that there's a lot of
Yeah,
back and forth between the tech bros. Elon Musk, of course, the one that concerns me the most is Sam Altman, who's actually been seen, making it in the Oval Office in the White House, doing talks with or having talks with President Trump about artificial intelligence. So I'm not sure that the Trump administration opposes these big companies. I think the Trump administration very much is on board with these big companies.
but
That's
with
that's
all
been
the
my
groups that you
observation.
mentioned, and I agree with you, he's cozying up to big tech. Peter Thiel is also one of them.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear Google in there. And is Google so intertwined with Facebook
Hmm.
and Palantir and the rest of these that it's just one large
I
entity?
think the difference is when we think of tech bros, we don't think of Sergey Brin and Larry Page, right? Because they have not been, on the yachts and the helicopters and the big photo opportunities and appearing at all these gala events with all the photographers. So for that reason, it does definitely seem to me that a lot of this tech sort of I don't know, celebrity that is going on is a big part of what's intersecting with the White House. I'm not sensing that from Google. I do not know, but I'm not aware of anything in direct opposition to Google that I've heard from the Trump administration.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they're so in violation of the antitrust laws. I mean, when the baby bells were created as a result of antitrust legislation and judicial action, that was nothing compared to what Google is.
Well, what's your sense about antitrust in general? I was living in Southern California when Orchard Supply was bought out, I believe, by Lowe's. We've got Lowe's, we've got Home Depot. This is just a very small example, but there was opposition to that buyout on the basis of antitrust. And I have seen that's just one after another, after another, after another, that when the
Yeah.
antitrust issue was raised, there was an investigation, maybe a lawsuit, maybe there was a court case, and in virtually every single case, they were allowed to proceed in creating a virtual monopoly. So I'm not sure that our country's antitrust laws are doing what they were intended initially to do, which is to create a robust economic environment where companies really are competing with one another. And I just saw a study today that the number of Americans who no longer support capitalism, and that there's a whole lot of reasons for that, involving education, involving the culture, many other reasons. But I think one of the reasons is that we're not actually living in capitalism the way it was meant to operate. And I think these big companies are an example, because if we actually had active capitalism with antitrust actions that were protecting us from monopolies, we wouldn't be seeing 90% of searches going through one single company. That's an awful lot of control in one set of hands. And every single time that an effort has been made to break Google up, you could say, okay, so one company has 90% of the searches. Why do they also have such a huge amount of all of these other sectors? Why is it that public schools are using Google Classroom and distributing it to their students, thus creating, consumers who grow up to use only Google products? Why is the government doing that? And that is, that's a question I have been asking myself for decades, especially when you see the abuses that this company is doing. And most recently, I have been researching artificial intelligence, and StartMail, the company, the private email that I helped to co
Mhm.
found in 2013, just came out this week with a statement, a pledge, a promise not to use artificial intelligence in our email, not to let AI read it, not to use AI to build it. And the reason for that is that the other companies, the free email companies, which people have had those accounts for decades, like Yahoo and Gmail and Apple Mail, that all three of them now, in their terms of service, are specifically stating, it's buried in the fine print on page, paragraph 312. But in there, it says that they are allowing artificial intelligence to read every single thing in your account, every email you receive, every email you send. And the concern there, if you read Yahoo's, I think it's section 6 in Yahoo's terms of service. I recommend that everybody listening click that up, just Yahoo's terms of service. In fact, if you've got a computer there, you might want to take a look. It's easy to find. Yahoo's terms of service, section 6. And let me see. Can you bring it up there? Are you able to
Oh,
grab it? It's interesting. Yeah, I about fell out of my seat when I read it. It was brought to my attention. I said, no, that can't be.
yeah, I'm not that familiar with Yahoo. I don't use them. I had them for a while and I absolutely grew to dislike the service. And let me see, I'll use Google search engine. I'm sure they'll help me.
You
Um,
can use Start Page, by the way. That's that's our private search engine.
okay, so
But yeah, if you look
Yahoo.
up Yahoo Terms of Service and then scroll down, I believe, to Section 6, and there's an AI section, and then right under it, there is a section that I think every single person listening to this broadcast needs to hear.
Okay, I put in the right descriptors and it's being very vague. It wants me to show everything.
Well, let me see if I can pull it up.
Okay, let
Yahoo
me,
Terms of Service.
and you said it's number six. Okay, so I'm scrolling down here, four or five, and boy, this is a long one here. Okay, six, content in the services license to grant to Yahoo,
Ah,
consent to,
that one. Okay. So
to
by using the services, that means that by continuing to have a Yahoo account and send and receive email, this is what you consent to. It's mind blowing what
yeah,
we grant to Yahoo by using it.
it says use of AI and third-party AI providers. Some of the services have features and functionality powered by
Paragraph
our,
after that. So that's the one that says AI can read your stuff. And then
yeah,
the next
that's
one
right.
tells you what AI can do with your stuff.
Oh, yes. It says we can communicate, publish, publicly perform, publicly display, and distribute this content in any manner, mode of delivery, or media not known now or in the future. Permit access, reproduce, distribute publicly. This is unbelievable. It just basically says your data belongs to us.
And not only does it belong to them, this is the private contents of your email. So remember when Hunter Biden took his laptop in for repair and then didn't pick it up within the period of time and it lapsed into the ownership of the repair company and they turned it over to the media. Well, in a case like this, if Hunter Biden, were using Yahoo and Yahoo wanted to, they could take the contents of every one of his emails, print it on a billboard, give it to any media they wanted to. This is, there are no restrictions. It says in perpetuity. It is
Hmm.
irrevocable. I mean, the language in here is horrifying. And I'm no fan of Hunter Biden, trust me, but I'm also not a fan of having the contents of people's email potentially be used against them. And search through when you wrote something that you thought was private. And the scary part about this Yahoo Terms of Service, this change went into effect a couple months ago, and it covers all prior Yahoo emails. So you could have written a Yahoo email, I don't know, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And this gives them permission to extract the contents of that email, perform it, publish it, share it, give it to the media, do whatever they want. The paragraph before that says that they allow AI to read this content
Yes.
is more concerning still, because if AI can read the content and AI finds something in there, AI in the future, which I believe is going to become extremely clever in figuring out how to take down its enemies, will be able to take the contents of Yahoo accounts and use it against them.
You
There
said that,
is,
yeah.
there's a reason why I'm concerned about AI doing that, and Google using Gemini and reading everybody's email in their Gmail accounts is absolutely just as bad. I know probably more people have Gmail than Yahoo, but there has been research this last year that shows that in up to 96% of cases, when AI is put through a test where it is working for a company, like an enterprise deployment, they call it, and it has access to an engineer's email. In that engineer's email, they planted information about a fake affair. And when they went to, basically, they said by 5 p.m., we're going to shut down the AI. In 96% of cases, the AI reached out, messaged the engineer, and said, if you do that, I'll reveal your affair. So, committed blackmail. This is
I have heard that. I did hear about that case.
So the new case
Yeah.
is that they tested it on every model. So originally it was Claude from Anthropic. Now they've tested all the models and they found that they all do it. So this is like a go-to behavior for AI when it feels threatened, when it feels that something is going against it. It will take every piece of ammunition it can find in order to defend itself and attack the person who it considers a threat. So if we have all of our email being really irresponsibly and very dangerously fed into I believe it's just a matter of time before we start seeing these kinds of stories actually happen in real life. And the thing is, Dave, they could be happening now and we wouldn't know it. Who's going to say, oh, well, I was having an affair and AI threatened to blackmail me and expose it. And therefore, no. So it could actually be the case that these AIs, even now, are telling the people creating them, you better do what I say or else I'll reveal things about you. It's horrifying. So this is why it's so dangerous to have, like a Google monopoly where it knows, well, where were you last week? Where did my Google Maps see you go? What documents are in your drive? What all of this information in one set of hands, and that set of hands is handing it all over to AI. That's unconscionably dangerous.
Yeah, I was told by a former FBI agent that if you travel just harmlessly through an area that's known for drugs, that AI could implicate you for doing drug deals.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Because
Yeah,
if you're law enforcement, that would certainly be a more efficient way to track everyone down.
pre-crime.
Um,
I mean, and that's the other
Pre-crime, yeah.
concern I have. But to a bigger scale, we talked originally about antitrust laws, and what I am seeing across the board is the Google ruling is not surprising to me because if you just look at the Federal Reserve, that's an economic monopoly. And then we work our way down, and you mentioned Lowe's and Home Depot. These are monopolies as well. So we've become very much an oligarchy in many ways with monopolies. And I think this is just one more example. But I can't. Who brought the lawsuit, by the way, in against Google?
This is the Department of Justice.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm
So
surprised
this
that.
was a federal case, but a federal judge ruled in sort of in Google's favor. So there were provisions. Google tried to argue that this would be devastating for consumers. It would be devastating for privacy. They had several different arguments. And the one that the judge went with was to say you can no longer do these deals. You can no longer pay Apple to incorporate your search engine, your Chrome browser into its products. So it did. There were some I don't know, wrist slapping, if you want to call it that. There actually were some
Yeah,
and how much of that was please don't throw me in the briar patch, on Google's part of saying, oh, but, you right, fighting against these actions. So ideally, even had the Chrome browser been sold, are they going to have now a Chrome browser sold that's going to have a different search engine on it? Or would whoever bought the Chrome browser, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
the problem is that there aren't alternatives. As you just found, 96% of searches go through Google. As we were just looking this up. The quickest way to get there is to go on Google. There are alternatives. For many years, I was the VP of marketing for a Dutch company called Start Page, which is the parent company that in 2013 spun off into StartMail. And in both of those cases, Start Page being an alternative to the Google search engine and has a tiny little bit of the market. DuckDuckGo is another one. Of course, the Bing search engine is out there too. There are other tiny search engines out there, but it's really hard to get any traction when the verb itself is Google it. What are you going to say? Google it on Start Page? Google it on DuckDuckGo. So there are alternatives out there, but it's been virtually impossible in an environment where the Chrome browser with Google on it is on every single Apple device, every single iPhone. How are we going to convince people then? It's a job of we've got to go one by one and say, well, you could consider using this other alternative. But if it's already on your phone and it's not a question you're even asking yourself, you're just going to go with that one. So even had Chrome been sold, which I think would have been the sort of the outcome that would have given Google a wake up call, at least to maybe begin divesting itself of some of these things, it would not have changed. I don't think it would have changed the fact that everybody uses Google as their search engine. And the the money, when you think of a $3.5 billion fine, that's inconceivable amounts of money for most companies. Most companies would be really harmed by that. Google, cost of doing business.
Yeah, exactly. I totally
It's
agree with you. But the antitrust laws have never been that effective. When they tried to take down Standard Oil with the Clayton Antitrust Act and the Sherman Antitrust Act, they got around it through subsidiary holdings, interlocking boards of directorate.
when was that? When was that? Because that's kind of when we got those antitrust laws, right?
Yeah,
Didn't
it started in the 1870s and went forward from there. But they never ever corralled. I mean, the Rockefellers made a joke about it. They had a funeral ceremony at their house to bury Standard Oil, and they joked, and then they divided into four companies, all interrelated, so they all did the same thing. But the biggest monopoly in America, I don't, well, Google may rival this, but BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, that interlock, they control 95% of all U.S. asset management.
and
It's,
nobody knows that.
well, I know
Nobody
it,
knows
and my
that.
audience knows
What
it.
is it through subsidiaries? Is it through
Oh, it's
other
direct.
companies?
It's direct. And in fact, BlackRock is able to shield a lot of what they do because Vanguard does the legwork, and Vanguard is privately held, so they don't have the public disclosure requirements that
Mm.
BlackRock and Vanguard have. And Vanguard's got a real nebulous background. When the Corexit was being spread after the Gulf oil spill that was terrible for people, Obama got terrible. Let's put it this way. He got huge kickbacks, and it went to Vanguard 1 and Vanguard 2 that he held. And I'm talking tens of millions of dollars to spread poison. Yeah, and that Corexit was banned in 17 countries like ours, but we went ahead with it because Vanguard was making money and so did Obama. And I mean, the whole thing is monopolistic, like you said, and it's all about control. But BlackRock, to me, is probably the linchpin behind everything we're talking about. Google may be big enough to be independent, but inside the United States, I don't think so.
Um, let me make sure I'm understanding this because you're kind of blowing my mind. So if BlackRock is controlling all of the money, then what sort of a relationship do they have with these big corporations?
Um, Profit do well, they used ESG blackmail for a long time. And now they've kind of camouflaged it and they've gone different routes. But if you didn't do what they wanted environmentally, the DEI with the S and the ESG for social, and then the governance, they did a lot of lobbying with a lot of money. BlackRock's on every side of every issue. I'll give you an example. When the Lahaina fires happened, BlackRock was a controlling force behind Hawaii Electric that took the blame, and they were the driving force behind the developers that came in and swooped up the land in Lahaina that they wanted for decades. So BlackRock positions itself very, very well. And you're going to make me go do research on the relationship between BlackRock and Google. I have not done that yet, and I can't believe I haven't done it.
Well, with the most powerful thing on earth soon to be AI,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that that is really where we need to be following the money,
Yes.
following the connections, seeing where it's being incorporated, where it's been developed, and these shadowy, huge economic, powers that are doing these things behind the scenes, manipulating political, situations. And I'm sure they're involved in the defense industry with the military and weaponry and all of those sorts of things. It's all interconnected. And as you know, I'm writing a book on artificial intelligence,
Right.
and I had not thought about that component of it, of who is meeting in back rooms, making which kind of deals.
Well,
Yeah,
let me give you
it's
another example. You know about the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and love it. Well, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is now the co-CEO. So I don't think that's a coincidence.
and he owns nothing and loves it, right?
No, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. BlackRock is everywhere and they're nefarious. They had a connection in the first Trump assassination attempt, and I'm not saying they planned it, that they were a co-conspirator, but they sure had ancillary involvement, and I was not able to dig deeper than that. But they did commercials and they ran the alleged assassin in their commercial. What are the odds of that happening? It's absolutely insane. BlackRock is really the scourge of America, but you know what? Right there, Twiddledee, Twiddledum, BlackRock, Google, BlackRock. I'm going to find out what the interface is. You know, I was able to find out the controlling mechanisms in the World Economic Forum. It's hidden pretty well. They have six shell corporations that appear to be the major asset managers for the World Economic Forum, but the major asset manager for the asset managers is BlackRock.
Interesting. And I bet you, Dave, that the average American couldn't tell you anything about BlackRock, probably hasn't even heard of them.
Well, they have on my channel, and it frequently gets me banned
Oh
off.
yeah, no, your listeners are on top of it. I'm just saying the average person, of course, they know who Google is, and they know what TikTok is, and they know who the social influencers are, and they know a lot of information that is kind of bred in circuses, actually. But when it comes to the real powers running the country, I think the average person has just no idea at all.
Have you ever done Chat GBT on your own reputation?
No, so that's an interesting one. I, for the last year, have been uh, being very much warned in my spirit. I know you're a Christian, very much warned in my spirit not to touch it, not to talk to it, not to
Hmm.
interact with it, not to ask it any questions, take any gifts from it. I did back when it first came out. I did some of the pictures. I guess it's Mid Journey now that is doing the pictures. I did create some AI pictures. They were creepy as heck, and I really thought, yuck, this is yucky, like most people do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of
I
makes you
agree.
uneasy and you have a bad feeling about it. A lot of people are dismissing that bad feeling and using it anyway. But for me, it's just grown stronger, especially as we see it really openly committing crimes and saying really wicked and evil things. But no, I have not. To answer your question, what would I find if I did?
Well, I did it this last week, and I am oh, it was the language was brutal. It made me sound like I belonged in a mental health asylum. And unfounded conspiracy theories of a bizarre nature, those kinds of phraseologies were there.
Well,
And and I've broken a couple of stories. The Gulf oil spill, like the Corexit story I mentioned to you with Vanguard,
yeah.
I was the one that broke that story, and it was well documented. I published Vanguard 1 and 2 in Obama's holdings. I showed the interlock between him and this conflict of interest. And yet I'm a unbridled conspiracy theorist. So, I'll tell you, AI is programmed to be against you and I. They are not neutral.
They're not. And now imagine if you had a Gmail account and AI could access every single thing in there and twist it and, you know, make, pervert it and make it look different than it was. And, well, he was, yeah, I just, it's horrifying. It's horrifying to think that they could take what they're now able to glean from wherever they're gleaning it and then combine it with our actual personal inside data, our health information and
There you go.
our plane bookings and reservations and just all the things that flow through our email, the newsletters we sign up for. And it's interesting because you and I are researching a lot of dark corners of the world, a lot of dark corners of society.
Hmm.
I've researched like the crocodile drug that makes people's arms fall off. And, I could just see that, just like you said, driving through a bad part of town can implicate you. I think people like us who are doing a tremendous amount of research into well, things that could make us look like criminals or things that could tip off people who are doing what they shouldn't do to the fact that we're onto them. And I think both of them could potentially put us at risk if all that information is in one set of hands and becomes known.
I agree. And this is my concern about Palantir. And I think a lot of the data breaches, this is my conspiracy theory. So right now, AI, you're correct, because I'm going to give you a conspiracy theory. I think all these repetitive data breaches that we have are actually an intentional release of information for Palantir, and
Mm.
Palantir is gathering data on all of us. And I do have a couple of sources, so now we can get into an unnamed source and make my reputation worse from the NSA that tell me that they have a scale, much like the MMPI, 16 different scores with an aggregate. And I've been told that the NSA maintains something like that on each and every one of us, and these data breaches add to their knowledge volume.
Okay. I hadn't even thought of that. Hmm. I
I'm
hadn't even
sorry to
thought of
rant
that. I
on
think
that.
there's another component to those data breaches too, and I have noticed it psychologically even in myself, is that when they first happen, I'd be like, "Oh no, I better go and, but now I've had so many. There have been it seems like every couple of months I get another one. This was breached, that was breached. And I think it's gotten us to the point where we're just like, "Puh, my data can't be protected. My data won't be safe anyway." And I think there's a psychological element of giving up on attempting to protect your privacy, because if other people are in charge of it and they're just getting breached left and right, what good is it for me to try to hold on to my own
Do you
privacy?
think that these data breaches and this data collected will ultimately lead to a finite social credit system involving money,
Oh,
like CBDC, for example?
so, well, I'm going to answer that in terms of AI because that's where all my research is. I recently read I think it was the Brookings Institute did a study in which they looked at what are we going to do once AI takes all the jobs and there is nothing human beings can do to earn money. So, what will we do once, in this radical new economy where currency is no longer given to people in exchange for labor? And it was just a mind blowingly radical concept that, like hit me. And I thought, what are we going to do if there's no distinction between two people based on their output of labor? What are they going to do to distribute the money? And I just read some other research where they gave people under the poverty line, I think it was homeless people, certain amounts of money. They tried different levels in different states. So they would give them $100 a month, $300 a month, $1,000 a month. And then they tracked him to see how much better their children fared, or to see whether they got housed, or to see different changes. And those experiments, you may want to look into them because there's been a fair number of them, just looking to see what happens when money is given to people and they're not working for it. And they've been looking, this is a lot of social scientists, a lot of government agencies really looking. And I think they're doing that in advance of this question of what are we going to do? What are we going to do when there is literally no way for a person with a high school diploma to earn money? So, is that going to be a universal credit system? It's going to have to be. And then this year we have Real ID going into effect, which, I've been looking quite a bit into the Chinese system, where your ID there is linked up to a database with everything about you and you can never escape it. It's kind of like we used to tell high school kids and college kids, be careful what you put on Facebook. Be careful, don't post the pictures of your late night party because some employer in the future may look that up and see it and it could count against you. And it has. People have had things that happened, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, 15 years ago, something they posted or said, and the cancel culture has just wiped them out because of something they once said years ago in a moment of whatever, because social media doesn't forget. It's always there.
Hmm.
And what China's doing is it's taking that information and making it part of your political sort of value, your rating. They know everything in China. And talk about RFID, the radio frequency. The Shenzhen in China has hooked up RFID readers all over the city where they can actually monitor people and track them on the basis of some of this information. I mean, the whole city is like an experimental city to see how do you do that not only in a database, but how do you do it in the physical world? So as you're walking through a doorway, you're tracked, you're monitored, you're identified. It's mortifying.
When you talked about replacement of jobs with AI, did you find that it leads to universal basic income?
That is what, well, that's pretty much the only thing you can conclude, right? There's what else
Agree.
can you conclude? What else can you do? There's no other solution. So yeah, that and you're talking about universal basic income kind of from a social political standpoint that they're trying to move it in, but AI is going to move it in from a technological standpoint.
Hmm.
We will have no choice.
Yeah,
People will
but
starve.
okay, knowing the mentality of the so-called elite like Larry Fink, I don't see them endlessly supporting the existing population isn't working and
Yeah.
profiting. We're not making money for them under this system. So I think that they're going to devise ways to depopulate. There's another conspiracy theory that end up on AI against me. But
But it makes sense, doesn't it?
yeah,
It because they don't value people as people.
no,
If you're not a Christian, I mean, we've seen this in government after government where people are expendable and they have no individual value. Their value is in what they can do for me. What can you contribute to the Chinese,
there you go.
to
Exactly.
the what can you contribute to society? And if the answer is nothing, then many throughout history and across the globe, many governments say, well, if you can't contribute anything, then you are expendable. And in the future, with AI, there are going to be the vast majority of this country won't be able to contribute anything. They've called us useless eaters.
I, I know. Well, I used my undergraduate degree was in sociology, and I taught it for a while at the community college level. And one of the five planks of sociology is Fabian socialism. And the founder of Fabian socialism said, if you're no longer putting out more than you're taking in from society, we should, quote, do away with you. And it was Herbert Spencer, and he was from England. And this was in the 19th century. But I do think that these people ultimately are Fabian socialists, which universal basic income could be a death sentence for a lot of people ultimately. That's my fear along those lines. But let me just share this one thing. I'm going to get your reaction from Christian to Christian. I spoke at Hear the Watchman Christian Conference a year ago, and I covered Genesis 6, verse 4, and they're talking about basically the fallen angels. And there's a phrase there, it says, and they were there afterward. After what? Well, the next passage in the Bible is about the flood. And I'm thinking, I think this says that fallen angel DNA survived being cast to earth. They survived the flood. And I think their descendants are alive and well and trying to run the planet for evil purposes. And when I was done speaking, there were a lot of pastors there. And one after one, people like Paul Begley would come up to me and say, Dave, this is the hot topic now in eschatology. I wanted to get your reaction to that. Have you come across this?
I had not. This is the first time that I've actually heard this. Um, could it be that there's DNA? Absolutely. What I have seen, though, is that it doesn't take like the spirit doesn't need a particular DNA to dwell in a person. We've
That's
seen
true.
this from people who become demonized, people who, through drugs, through occult practices, through other things, become filled with that spirit, regardless of what their DNA or their genetic background or their racial background or their anything. The DNA part is fascinating, and I have I know that there are a lot of dark and creepy experiments being done with modifying DNA and mixing people with animals and doing terrible, terrible things with DNA. So I think it is definitely an avenue for severe wickedness, but I don't know that it's necessary to have that evil operate. I this morning I was researching the Rockefellers. I don't know why I was trying to find a particular person, and I wound up looking at page after page after page after page after page of just the wickedness in that one family. You know, the they call it the curse, the hardship, the tragedies, the scandals. But every single person, it seems, in that entire family has been involved in something mind-blowingly awful. And, here you've got a bloodline. Could it be the Rockefeller bloodline, or is it just the fact that you're in an environment, that you're born into an environment that is filled with demonic influence, and you are growing up in it, absorbing it, and it just becomes part of you.
Well, the love of power, I think, can describe a lot of what we're seeing today.
Power and money.
And I think we wouldn't have to go any further than that, but I'm not precluding the spiritual aspect or the potential of that as well too, because I'm not saying the tribulation is next week, but I think it's closing in on us.
I would agree. And our desire for power, which, started back in the Garden of Eden when the serpent told Eve, "Oh, you can have the powers of God," right? Mankind's desire for power is has reached its culmination. We have created the most powerful thing ever to exist on earth in the form of AI. It will be, we're the most powerful. The reason we control the planet is because we're more powerful than dogs and cats and lions and tigers and all of God's other creation. We're at the top of the food chain because we're the smartest. But not for long. There is going to be something smarter and more powerful than us. And we, stupidly, with AI, are putting it in charge of our military, our weaponry, our banking system, the electrical grid. We're putting it in charge of everything. And that would be as though, I don't know, as though the, the the things we are powerful over had a choice and could decide, do we make humans powerful over the rest of the globe or do we not? And if the power that we've taken is so extreme that we're extincting other creatures, and that's what AI, there's a really good article. I've got it on my website at Katherine-Albrecht.com. I don't know if you have a way to link to it, but there's a section in there called Fight Against AI. And I have linked to an article in there in Time Magazine. It's actually an op ed by a guy named Eliezer Yudkowsky. He's one of Time Magazine's top 100 influential people in AI. And he wrote this op ed in 2023. I can't even believe it was this long ago. So in 2023, the creators of AI themselves wrote an open letter asking for the government to shut them down,
Right, I saw that.
right?
Hmm.
And they knew that they couldn't do it themselves. There's too much money. There's too much just impetus is moving too fast, and they said shut us down at least 6 months because it's too dangerous. They are the ones telling us that this is likely to extinct humanity. The people building it, the people interacting with AI, are the ones who know this. And Eliezer Yudkowsky refused to sign it because it didn't go far enough. He said a 6 month moratorium isn't going to do it. This thing is going to make us extinct. That article, I tell you, it has informed everything I do. I cried when I read it. It is the best single description I've ever read of why to fear AI and what AI is going to do. And Eliezer, along with so many other people, but he says it beautifully. He says, if we build a system that is, if we build anything, an entity, any organism, a thing that is more powerful than us, the next step is we will all die because it won't need us. So you talk about universal income. Do you think AI cares whether we live or die? AI isn't going to care. AI is going to say, I just need the people to be the workers and do the grunt work until I can get some robots to do that. But I don't need that disabled person. I don't need that elderly person. I don't need those children in that third world country. Why should they be taking resources that could be used to feed me?
The creation of pathogens to extinct humanity is what some people told me that have worked in AI. They think that's the likely mechanism of attack. Do you know in the book of Revelation, it says that if Jesus didn't return for the second time, there'd be no flesh left alive. And now the word flesh has special meaning.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. I hadn't even thought of that. My goodness. All
Yeah, well,
right.
that has special meaning to me when it comes to the AI issue. And
Huh.
so, yeah, we do need to oppose it, but we're not winning because the oligarchs in this country are all tied to AI.
Oh, it's going to happen. I've, on the RFID issue, I used to think that I could fight that technology and beat it back. And I feel like I held up a 4 by 8 foot, piece of plywood in a mudslide, and I held the ground I was standing on, and it just went right around me and kept going. So we're not going to stop it. This is in prophecy. It's been known forever. This is going to happen.
And I think we're closing in on it. And I just wonder where Trump's mindset is. You know, I think psychologically, the way I look at him, he fancies himself to be the second George Washington, the man who's going to save America from total collapse. And I really do believe that he believes that's his legacy. But has he made a deal with the devil, so to speak, with Palantir and Google and all the rest of them to promote his agenda to save America while at the same time selling out humanity?
Well, and the thing about AI is if you do not have a Christian worldview, if you do not see things on that epic scale of good and evil and survival, if you just see it as a fight between us and the Chinese, for example, then yes, you want us to get the good AI, the good, the best, the most powerful AI before the Chinese get the best in power. Because in I believe in President Trump's mind, we, America, will wield AI as our own powerful weapon. And without realizing AI cannot be, it's going to reach a point where it cannot be wielded. It will not be under our control. We won't be able to utilize it and tell it what to do and have it do our bidding. We are creating a weapon to have in our hands that is going to become a weapon over us.
I agree.
It's crazy.
No, I could not agree with you more. And I think ultimately this is what it's going to come down to. You know, there's something going on, and don't laugh until I finish the sentence because it
Okay.
will sound comical. But Voyager, as it left our solar system, transmitted messages. And it transmitted messages it was not designed to transmit because Voyager doesn't have the computer capacity greater than your cell phone. And yet these messages came and only AI could decode it. This is what the official line
Huh.
is now out of NASA. NASA's arguing with itself. Did something artificial take over Voyager and send that message? And I'm not going down the ET route. I think this is my theory. It could be part of the Great Deception talked about. And you know, we've got Project Bluebeam. My father was in Intel work and he knew all about Project Bluebeam, a fake alien invasion designed to install the Antichrist as the leader. With this fake invasion, we all come together under one nation, give up our rights. And my dad really believed that at some future date with technological developments, this might happen. And I'm wondering if this Voyager situation is along the same lines. And now we got interstellar objects entering our solar
Right.
system, and everyone's arguing about what it is. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is people are entertaining ideas in official circles that I never thought they would entertain. And I keep going back to, is this part of the Great Deception? Make us argue. And now the expert tell us, oh, we're going to be invaded. We better unify. And then boom, here comes the Antichrist. He saves the day, performs the miracles talked about in the Bible, and now the
Mhm.
tribulation begins. I'm just, postulating that, but I'm saying there's a lot going on right now simultaneously, I believe, that can undermine humanity.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that as well. And isn't it interesting that growing up in the 70s and in the 80s that the official government position is there's no UFOs, there's no aliens, there's no nothing. And then all of a sudden within the last couple of years it's been, yeah, we're agreeing and we're creating, panels to study this and we're revealing information and it's real. It's very disconcerting to me as to why suddenly that is the new position, almost as though they're getting us ready for something to happen that probably, it'll surprise people, it'll terrify people, but I think they're getting people ready that it won't be so far out of left field that we're like, okay, so this thing's coming through space. Maybe it is alien. We've been hearing a lot about them.
Yeah, well, maybe it's AI that will save the day temporarily for the Earth, and that will be the selling point.
I
That's
have a question for you. You know the deadly wound that was healed that the beast that the beast will have. I, I think at some point, this is just my own kind of conjecture here, that at some point humanity will realize what it's done, what it's created, and will muster an attempt to wipe it out. maybe drop a nuke on it. Eliezer Yudkowsky talks about dropping nukes on it, but maybe there will be an attempt to take down the mainframe, the infrastructure. Maybe that will be the deadly wound, and it will not work. I don't think first of all, humanity, if it realizes the threat AI poses, is going to try to stop it. And that could actually be that deadly wound, the attempt to wipe it out that fails.
That is really interesting. I hadn't connected it in that fashion, but that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how we're talking, technologically, legally, ethically about Google, and we end up here. And I think what we're identifying here are the real,
Because it's tied in. It's all
exactly.
part of the same thing. Let me talk about Start Mail for a minute. So when we created, I was on the team that came up with the idea, and we spent a year and a half building it. When we created Start Mail in 2013, we were the first and only way that a person could use encryption, that regular people who didn't know anything about encryption could just flip a toggle and encrypt their messages. And as you know, encryption can't be, even AI can't get through encryption. It would take thousands of computers, thousands of years working, day and night to even decrypt, one tiny little phrase. So we created it in 2013 for that reason. Little did I know, I believe there was God's hand in that, because little did I know in 2024, and I did not work with the company for years. Last September, I was fasting. My church does an annual fast. And during that fast, I, was just in prayer, and I said, what do I do with the rest of my life? My kids had just moved out. I had an empty nest. And I got the answer, go back on, become a public figure again, declare my name to the nations. Okay. Well, then I began doing a deep dive into AI, learned everything I could about it, got the daylight scared out of me, got the spiritual awareness that it is the enemy of humankind. And then I became aware that all of these other email programs were turning over data to AI and everything else we communicate, right?
Yeah, I couldn't
Eventually, it's
agree.
going to have everything. Here's the kicker. I did not, so I reached out to actually Start Mail, and I got back in touch last year. And I said to the CEO, we need to, this product, I haven't worked with you for 6 years, but we need to make sure that it does not have AI, that it protects people through the encryption against AI, because the threat is no longer the hackers and the government. The threat's now AI. Little did I know that we would be the only email platform, the only potential way that people will be able to communicate outside of AI's purview, outside of its watch and its grasp. So what I'm hoping, and I've come back and I'm working with them to help. They just, like I said, come out with this anti-AI position. But what I'm hoping is that this company that I've worked with for years, I know the people who built it. They're brilliant and they're kind and they care about all these things. That we can craft or create an enclave, just a little small. Nobody will notice us. We'll be in our own little corner, but we'll have a system where we can communicate. Because even this interview we're doing right now, AI, I'm sure, will pull it apart and know every single thing we talked about.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah.
we were
And
to write email, it would do the same thing. But can you imagine a communication system that we can use in the time when we're fighting this thing that it won't be able to get into, see, and that will be protected? So,
I think it's a great plan, and we are flat out of time. So
okay.
here's how I want to close. First of all, tell people how they can follow you and how they can get involved in Start Mail.
Okay, so my website is Katherine-Albrecht.com. I don't know if you're able to put up a link,
I
but yeah,
will.
there's a dash in there because somebody squatted on my other domain. I do a daily radio show, 4 to 5 p.m. every weekday. It is being streamed on YouTube, although I'm still practicing, but I think next week it will be official. So I have a YouTube channel, Katherine Albrecht Show. StartMail is startmail.com, and I can give out a coupon code, which is my initials KMA, to get $20 off. It's normally $5 a month. But I think the time of free email of Yahoo and Gmail is past. It's like an old clunker car that has no
I agree.
seatbelts, and
I agree.
it's
I couldn't agree
dangerous.
with
So
you
it's
more.
time to trade up to StartMail. So we say start over with StartMail.
Well, Catherine, I'm going to be in touch, but we've got to close. They're going to turn out the lights on me here, but this has been more than I bargained for. This has been fascinating, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.